The crystal chandelier cast soft shadows across Aaron's dining table as polite laughter filled the room. I sat between strangers at my own son's dinner party, watching Vanessa hold court like a queen. She was talking about investments, her voice sharp and confident, when she glanced my way. "You wouldn't understand, Helena. It's about modern investments. It's not your generation." The conversation stopped. Everyone's eyes shifted between us. My chest tightened, but I kept my face neutral. Then she delivered the final blow with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Honestly, sometimes you sound like a fool." The silence that followed wasn't comfortable. It burned. I felt every person at that table holding their breath, waiting to see if the old woman would cry or argue or leave in shame. Instead, I set down my fork carefully, lifted my wine glass, and met her gaze directly. "Well, Vanessa," I said quietly, my voice steady as stone, "fools tend to see things others miss." I took a slow sip while her smirk faltered just slightly. Nobody knew it yet, but that moment changed everything. My name is Helena Tate, and I wasn't always this quiet. 23 years ago, my husband collapsed in our driveway from a massive heart attack. He was 41. I was 37 with a 12-year-old son and no income. The life insurance barely covered the funeral. I had two choices that autumn morning after we buried him. I could crumble, or I could build. I chose to build. I started small, flipping foreclosed houses with money borrowed from my late husband's brother. I learned everything myself, watching YouTube videos at midnight, reading real estate books until my eyes burned. Within 5 years, I owned 3 rental properties. Within 10, I had a small portfolio that generated enough income to send Aaron to any college he wanted. I gave him everything. Private school. Study abroad programs. A car for his 16th birthday. And when he married Vanessa 4 years ago, I gave them the most precious thing I owned. My home. The Victorian house I'd restored with my own hands, the one I'd planned to grow old in. I thought I was giving them love. It turns out, I'd handed them my power. The insult started small, so small I told myself I was being sensitive. Vanessa would make dinner plans and forget to tell me until everyone had already eaten. She'd laugh at my flip phone, calling it vintage in a way that wasn't affectionate. Once, at a family gathering, she arranged everyone for a photo and somehow I wasn't included. "Oh, Helena, I didn't see you there," she'd said when I pointed it out. Aaron saw everything. But when I mentioned feeling excluded, he'd sigh and say, "Mom, just ignore her. You know how she is." That phrase became his shield. "You know how she is." As if her cruelty was weather, something we just had to endure. I started noticing a pattern. Every slight was small enough that complaining made me look petty. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. What hurt worse than Vanessa's disdain was Aaron's silence. My son, the boy I'd sacrificed everything for, had learned to look away. And I realized something painful. Silence doesn't keep the peace. Silence enables cruelty. It gives permission. That night after the dinner party, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the dark house to my old office, the room I'd used to run my real estate business before I retired. The desk was covered in dust now, the filing cabinets full of documents I hadn't touched in years. I pulled out the old ledgers from when I transferred the house to Aaron and Vanessa. Something had been bothering me since that afternoon, a nagging feeling I couldn't name. I spread the papers across the desk, squinting in the lamplight. Then I saw it. The deed transfer document. My signature. Aaron's signature. But where Vanessa's signature should have been, there was nothing. Just a blank line. The transfer had never been completed properly. Technically, legally, the house was still mine. My late husband's voice echoed in my memory. He'd always said, "Keep copies of everything, Helena. Paper has power." I sat back in that dusty chair and felt something shift inside me. If they thought I was a fool, maybe it was time to remind them who built this house. Who paid for everything. Who still held the cards. 2 weeks later, Aaron hosted a backyard barbecue. I helped set up tables while Vanessa entertained guests by the pool. I was carrying a tray of glasses when I heard her voice drift through the open kitchen window. She was talking to her friend Cassidy, their backs to me. "We'll sell this dump next year and finally move somewhere decent," Vanessa said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Maybe that new development downtown. This place is so outdated." Cassidy laughed. "Does Helena know?" "Please. She gave it to us." "What's she going to do, complain?" "She's lucky we let her stay here." My hands trembled so badly I had to set the tray down. They were planning to sell my house. The house I'd restored board by board, the house where Aaron grew up, where I'd hung photos of every birthday and holiday. They wanted to erase me completely. I looked around at the garden I'd planted, the porch I'd rebuilt after a storm, the walls I'd painted. This wasn't just a house. This was my history. I walked back outside wearing the same pleasant smile I always wore, but inside, something had crystallized. I would act, but I would act quietly. Monday morning, I drove to First National Bank and asked to see Mr. Hensley, the banker who'd helped me build my portfolio 20 years ago. He was grayer now, wearing reading glasses that sat low on his nose. "Helena Tate," he said warmly, standing to shake my hand. "It's been too long." We made small talk for a few minutes before I asked the question that had been burning in my mind. "Has anyone inquired about my properties recently? About transferring titles?" His expression shifted, became careful. "I shouldn't discuss other clients' inquiries. Even if they're inquiring about my property?" He was quiet for a moment, then pulled out a file. "Vanessa Tate came in 3 weeks ago. She wanted to know the process for transferring property titles from a parent to an adult child. She specifically asked about expedited transfers." My suspicion confirmed. She wasn't just planning to sell. She was planning to take legal control first. Mr. Hensley leaned forward. "Helena, I didn't give her any information because I checked the records. That house is still in your name. The deed transfer was never finalized." I smiled faintly. "Let them think I'm naive, Mr. Hensley. It works in my favor." "What are you planning?" he asked. "I'm planning to remember who I am." That Friday, another dinner. This time just family. Vanessa had made her famous roasted chicken, the one everyone always praised. I brought homemade apple pie, the recipe my mother taught me. As we ate, Vanessa turned the conversation to cars. "Helena, you're still driving that ancient sedan, aren't you? The blue one?" She said it like she was concerned, but her eyes told a different story. "Aaron's been saying we should help you upgrade. Maybe something more appropriate for your age. You know, easier to handle." Several people around the table nodded sympathetically, like I was a child who needed supervision. I cut a small piece of chicken and smiled gently. "You know, dear, things that last decades often hold their value better than flashy new models. My car has 300,000 miles and runs perfectly. Some things are built to endure." Vanessa's jaw tightened slightly. "Well, I suppose if you're comfortable looking outdated." "I'm very comfortable," I said, meeting her eyes. "In fact, I'm more comfortable than I've been in years." It was a quiet warning, one nobody else caught. But Vanessa heard it. I saw the flicker of uncertainty cross her face before she turned away. The next morning, I visited my late husband's lawyer, Bernard Shaw, the man who'd helped me navigate probate all those years ago. His office smelled like old books and furniture polish. "Bernard," I said after we'd caught up, "I need to revise my will." He pulled out a legal pad. "What changes did you want to make?" "I want to transfer my business assets to a charitable trust. The Helena Tate Foundation for Widowed Women. I want it to help women who lose their husbands unexpectedly, the way I did. Give them seed money to start small businesses." "And your son?" Bernard asked carefully. I took a deep breath. "Aaron can remain in my will for personal items, sentimental things. But I'm removing him as trustee of any financial assets. Bernard studied my face. Helena, this is a significant change. Are you certain? I'll always love my son, I said quietly, my throat tight. But love shouldn't blind you. He's made his choices. He chose to stand by while his wife dismantled my dignity piece by piece. I won't reward that with my life's work. Bernard nodded and began writing. The documents took an hour to complete. When I signed my name, I felt strangely calm. I wasn't being vindictive. I was being clear-eyed. 3 days later, I met my friend Dorothy for coffee at the cafe downtown. We'd known each other since Aaron was in elementary school. As we were ordering, I spotted Cassidy, Vanessa's best friend, sitting alone at a corner table with a mimosa. She looked tipsy, her eyes slightly unfocused. Dorothy went to find us seats while I waited for my latte. That's when Cassidy noticed me. Oh. Helena. She waved me over enthusiastically. I haven't seen you in forever. I smiled politely and walked to her table. She gestured for me to sit. You know, she said, her voice louder than necessary, Vanessa talks about you all the time. Does she? I kept my tone neutral. Oh yeah. She's always saying how she convinced Aaron to sell everything once, you know, once you're. She made a vague gesture. Gone. My fingers trembled around my coffee cup, but I kept my face pleasant. Really? That's interesting. Yeah, she's got this whole plan. First the house, then those rental properties you own. She's done so much research. She leaned in conspiratorially. Between you and me, I think she's counting her chickens before they hatch, if you know what I mean. I did know. I knew exactly what she meant. I thanked her for the chat and joined Dorothy. But my mind was elsewhere, cataloging every word. Every threat. Every assumption. That weekend, Aaron invited me to lunch. Just the two of us, which was rare these days. Over sandwiches at the deli we used to visit when he was young, he seemed nervous. Mom, Vanessa mentioned you've been asking questions at the bank. I took a bite of my sandwich, chewing slowly. I'm allowed to manage my own finances, aren't I? Of course. It's just, she's worried you might be getting confused. You know, with financial stuff. She thinks maybe we should help you more. I set down my sandwich and looked at my son. Really looked at him. When had he become someone who questioned my competence? Aaron, I built a real estate portfolio from nothing after your father died. I put you through college without loans. I've managed money longer than you've been alive. He had the grace to look embarrassed. I know, Mom. I'm just saying, maybe let us help. I don't need help, I said firmly. But thank you for lunch. That evening, I enrolled in an online financial management course. Not because I needed it, but because I wanted to understand every modern tool available. The course covered cryptocurrency, online trading platforms, digital asset management. Vanessa had mocked me for not understanding technology. I smiled at my computer screen, typing rapidly. This fool could learn anything she wanted to. Aaron's 35th birthday arrived with fanfare. Vanessa organized a dinner party at the house, inviting 20 people. I brought a homemade gift, a photo album I'd spent weeks creating, filled with pictures of Aaron growing up. Every birthday, every milestone, every moment I'd documented. Vanessa arrived wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my car payment, showing it off to every guest. When gift opening time came, she handed Aaron an expensive watch. Everyone oohed and awed. Then Aaron opened my album. He flipped through it quietly, his expression softening. For a moment, I saw my little boy again. Mom, this is beautiful, he said, his voice thick. Vanessa glanced at it dismissively. How sweet. Very, handmade. The word dripped with condescension. I smiled pleasantly. Yes, some things can't be bought in stores, Vanessa. They require time and memory. Then I dropped my bomb, casual as discussing weather. Speaking of which, I met with the bank this week. Mr. Hensley had such interesting news about property titles and deed transfers. Vanessa choked slightly on her wine. Her eyes darted to me, wide and alert. Oh. What kind of news? Just clarifications on legal documentation. Very enlightening. The tension at the table was thick enough to cut. Aaron looked between us, confused. But Vanessa understood. I saw it in her face. That night, my phone rang at 11. Aaron's name lit up the screen. Mom, what did you do? His voice was tight with anxiety. I was reading in bed, wearing my old bathrobe, completely calm. I met with my banker. I'm allowed to do that. Vanessa's been asking questions. She's worried about something. What exactly is she worried about, Aaron? Silence. Then, she wants to make sure everything is in order. With the house. With the properties. Everything is in perfect order, I said truthfully. I'm just securing my future. You should secure yours too. What does that mean? It means you should understand what you actually own versus what you think you own. Good night, sweetheart. I hung up before he could respond. My heart was pounding, but it felt good. For the first time in 4 years, I wasn't the one on the defensive. I wasn't explaining or apologizing or shrinking. I was standing my ground, and they could feel the earth shifting beneath them. I turned off the light and fell asleep easier than I had in months. Power doesn't come from being loud. It comes from knowing exactly where you stand. The next morning, I was going through old boxes in the attic, looking for something else entirely, when I found them. Letters. Letters from my late husband, written during his last business trip before he died. I'd forgotten about these. I sat on the dusty floor and opened the first envelope. His handwriting made my throat tight. Most were love letters, reminders of doctor's appointments, jokes about the hotel food. But one letter was different. It was addressed to our lawyer, a copy he'd kept for records. Per our discussion, the deed transfer for 427 Maple Street shall include a conditional clause. Should family harmony be compromised or should Helena determine that the transfer no longer serves the family's best interest, full ownership shall revert to Helena Tate without contest. This protects her future security while allowing our son to benefit from the property during harmonious times. My hands shook as I read it twice, 3 times. My husband had built in a safety net. He'd trusted my judgment. He'd known that someday I might need an escape route. I called Bernard Shaw immediately. Bernard, I found something. A letter from my husband about conditional deed transfers. He asked me to read it to him. After a long pause, he said, Helena, this changes everything. With this document and the incomplete transfer signatures, you have complete legal grounds to reclaim the property immediately. 2 weeks later, the inevitable clash came. I was in the garden, tending my roses, when Vanessa stormed out. We need to talk about this garden, she said, her voice sharp. I'm hiring a landscape company to modernize everything. These old-fashioned roses have to go. I stood up slowly, my gardening gloves dirty with soil. No. Excuse me? I said no. These roses stay. Helena, this is our house. We get to decide about landscaping. I pulled off my gloves carefully, meeting her eyes. Actually, Vanessa, there are ownership clauses in the deed that give me final say on structural and landscape changes. I'm refusing this one. Her face went red. That's ridiculous. Aaron. He came to the door, looking uncomfortable. Vanessa turned to him. Tell your mother she can't block our decisions. Aaron looked at me, then at her. Mom, can we compromise? No, I said simply. The garden stays as it is. Vanessa's voice rose to a shout. This is insane. You're a crazy old woman. I turned back to my roses, my voice soft. No, Vanessa. I'm a careful old woman. There's a difference. She stormed back inside, slamming the door. I smiled at my roses and continued pruning. Each cut precise. Each decision mine. Late that night, Aaron knocked on my bedroom door. I was in bed reading, and I told him to come in. He looked exhausted, older than his 35 years. "Can we talk, Mom?" I put down my book and nodded. He sat on the edge of my bed like he used to when he was young and scared. "Vanessa's been pushing me to sell everything. The house, your rental properties if we can get control of them. She wants to move overseas. London, maybe Hong Kong. Start fresh somewhere exciting." My heart ached, but I kept my voice steady. "And what do you want?" "I don't know anymore," he admitted, his voice breaking. I thought I knew. I thought marrying her was the best decision. But lately, nothing feels right. I reached out and took his hand. "Aaron, I need you to understand something. I'm not fighting Vanessa because I'm controlling or jealous. I'm protecting myself because nobody else will. Not even you." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I should have protected you. I should have stopped her from treating you like this." "Yes," I said simply. "You should have." We sat in silence. Then I added, "Maybe it's time you see who's really protecting you, sweetheart. And who's just using what you have." Over the next week, I worked with Bernard Shaw to finalize the paperwork. The house would officially revert to my name. The incomplete deed transfer, combined with my late husband's conditional clause letter, made it legally flawless. "When do you want to execute this?" Bernard asked during our meeting. "Not yet," I said. "I want to wait for the right moment. Helena, the longer you wait, the more complicated it might become." "I know. But the best revenge isn't dramatic. It's letting the truth reveal itself naturally." Bernard smiled. "You've learned a lot about strategy over the years." "I learned from necessity," I replied. "When you're underestimated, you learn to move quietly." The documents were prepared, notarized, ready. All they needed was my signature to become active. I kept them in a locked drawer in my office, waiting. Watching. Learning exactly how far Vanessa would go. Because I needed to know whether my son would finally stand up for me, or if I truly was alone in this. The answer would determine everything that came next. Some questions require patience. This was one of them. The confrontation came on a Tuesday morning. I was making coffee when Vanessa appeared in the kitchen doorway, her phone in her hand. "You've been scheming," she said, her voice cold. "Planning things behind our backs." I poured my coffee calmly. "I've been managing my own affairs, Vanessa." "That's not scheming. That's called being an adult. You've been talking to lawyers. To bankers. Trying to take back what you gave us." "Interesting choice of words," I said, turning to face her. "Take back. As if you own it." "We do own it. You gave us this house." "Did I?" I took a sip of coffee. "Or did I let you live here while certain conditions were met?" Her face went pale, then red. "What conditions?" "Family harmony. Mutual respect. Basic human decency." I set down my cup. "You violated every single one. You can't do this. Aaron won't let you. Aaron doesn't have a choice. The house was never fully transferred. It's still mine." Vanessa's voice rose to a scream. "You're trying to destroy our marriage. You're a bitter old woman who can't stand seeing us happy." "No," I said quietly. "I'm a woman who survived worse than you. And I'm done pretending your cruelty doesn't exist." She stepped closer, threatening. "Fine. Then we'll evict you." I smiled, genuinely smiled. "You can't evict the owner, dear." 3 days later, a courier arrived at the front door while we were all home. Aaron signed for the envelope, confused. Inside were formal documents restoring my name to all property titles. The house. Everything. Legal, official, complete. Aaron stared at the papers, his face going white. Mom, what is this? Vanessa grabbed them from his hands, reading frantically. No. No, no, no. This can't be legal. It's completely legal, I said calmly from the sofa where I'd been reading. The deed transfer was never completed, and I've chosen to exercise my rights as owner. You conniving witch. Vanessa screamed. You planned this from the beginning. I planned nothing, I said. I simply remembered who I was. Would you like some tea? I just made a fresh pot. Aaron sank onto the stairs, his head in his hands. Vanessa paced like a caged animal, her phone out, already calling her lawyer. I sat perfectly still, sipping my chamomile tea, watching the chaos I'd known would come. Part of me felt guilty. But the larger part felt free. I wasn't the villain in this story. I was just the woman who'd finally stopped letting others write my ending. Within hours, Vanessa had posted on social media. Betrayed by my own mother-in-law. She's stolen our home out from under us. After everything we did for her, this is how she repays kindness. The post included a photo of our house with a caption about ungrateful elders. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Within an hour, the comments started pouring in, but not the way Vanessa expected. Dorothy posted, Helena paid for Aaron's entire college education and gave them that house as a wedding gift. Where's the theft? Mr. Hensley's wife, who'd known me for decades, commented, Helena Tate built that house with her own hands after her husband died. She's one of the strongest women I know. One after another, people who actually knew me defended the truth. People who'd watched me work 3 jobs to support my son. People who remembered when I had nothing. By evening, Vanessa's post had backtracked. There's been a misunderstanding, she wrote. But the damage to her reputation was done. Screenshots lived forever. That night, Aaron came to my room. The whole town is talking, he said quietly. Good, I replied. Maybe now they'll know the full story instead of just her version. By Friday, Aaron had moved out. Not permanently, he said, just temporarily while he figured things out. He rented a small apartment across town. Vanessa stayed in the house, technically my guest now, though the tension was unbearable. I didn't celebrate his leaving. Instead, I helped him pack, drove him to his new place, helped him unload boxes. Mom, I don't understand how it got this bad, he said as we set up his kitchen. It got this bad slowly, I told him. One small cruelty at a time. One dismissal. One insult. Until you couldn't remember what respect looked like. He was quiet for a long time. Then, I let her treat you terribly. I kept telling myself it wasn't that bad, that you were being sensitive. But you weren't. She was being cruel, and I let it happen. Yes, I said simply. You did. How do I fix this? I hugged him tightly. You don't fix the past, sweetheart. You learn from it. Sometimes you have to lose your comfort to gain clarity. This is your clarity moment. I left him in that small apartment with his boxes and his regrets, driving home alone. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt sad. Sad that it took destroying his marriage for him to finally see me. Sad that love sometimes requires such hard lessons. The following Tuesday, an unexpected visitor appeared at my door. An older woman with kind eyes and graying hair. Mrs. Tate? I'm Barbara Colton. Vanessa's mother. I invited her in, though I was cautious. We sat in the living room with coffee. I came to apologize, she said after a moment. For my daughter's behavior toward you. I was surprised. You don't need to apologize for her choices. I do, Barbara insisted. Because I made mistakes raising her. Her father and I gave her everything, never taught her gratitude or humility. When she didn't get her way, we'd fix it. We created this entitlement. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I watched her treat you terribly at family gatherings. I should have said something. I'm deeply sorry. We talked for an hour. She told me about Vanessa's childhood, the warning signs she'd missed, the manipulations she'd enabled. We both did our best as mothers, I said finally. Sometimes children make their own choices despite everything we teach them. You're kinder than I deserve, Barbara said. When she left, I stood at the window watching her car disappear. Forgiveness didn't erase damage, but it helped heal it. Maybe that was enough. The real collapse came 3 weeks later. Vanessa worked as a finance manager at a local investment firm. One morning, the news broke. She'd been misusing company funds, moving money between accounts to hide personal transactions. The scandal exploded across local news. Local financial manager accused of embezzlement. Aaron called me, devastated. Did you know about this? No, I said honestly. But I'm not surprised. People who take without permission in one area of life often do it everywhere. He came to my house that evening in tears, truly broken for the first time since he was a child. I defended her. I chose her over you. And she was stealing from her own company the whole time. I held my grown son while he cried, stroking his hair like I did when he was small. Now you see, my boy, I whispered. The fool wasn't me. It never was. How did you know? He asked through his tears. I didn't know specifically. But I knew her character. And character always reveals itself eventually. We sat together until dark, not talking, just being. Sometimes healing doesn't come from words. Sometimes it comes from simply being present when everything falls apart. He stayed the night in his old room, and I heard him crying through the walls. My heart broke for him, but it also mended something between us. Finally, he saw me clearly. 1 month later, I organized a dinner party. I invited the same people who'd been at that first dinner where Vanessa called me a fool. The same table. The same crystal chandelier. Even the same menu, down to the roasted chicken and apple pie. Aaron came alone, Vanessa having moved back to her parents' home after the scandal. I watched everyone take their seats, the irony not lost on me. Before dessert, I stood up, my wine glass in hand. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. Many of you were here months ago when I was told I didn't understand modern investments. Some people shifted uncomfortably, remembering. Since then, I've taken some of my old-fashioned investments and created something new. The Helena Tate Foundation for Widowed Women. It will help women who lose their husbands unexpectedly, giving them seed money to start small businesses. The foundation is endowed with $2 million. Gasps around the table. Aaron stared at me, shocked. I may not understand cryptocurrency or NFTs, I continued, but I understand something more valuable. I understand resilience. I understand that real wealth isn't just money. It's knowing who you are when everything is taken from you. I raised my glass. To the fools who see what the clever miss. Everyone drank, and this time, the silence was respectful. Odd, even. After dinner, as people were leaving, Aaron pulled me aside. We stood in the garden among my roses, the ones I'd refused to let Vanessa destroy. Mom, I need to say something publicly. At work, to our friends, to everyone. Aaron, you don't have to, I do, he interrupted. I need people to know what you did for me. What you sacrificed. How I betrayed that. The next day, he posted on social media. A long, honest post about his mother who'd raised him alone, who'd built a business from nothing, who'd given him everything and asked for nothing in return. About how he'd let his wife humiliate her, how he'd been blind to manipulation, how he was learning what real strength looked like. Vanessa tried to comment, but he'd blocked her. She'd moved back to her parents' house permanently after being fired from her job. Her lawyer was handling the embezzlement charges. I heard through mutual friends that she was furious about losing everything, her reputation, her marriage, her home, her financial security. But I felt no joy in her downfall. Just a quiet acknowledgement that consequences had finally arrived. I sat in my garden that evening, the same seat from that first dinner, wearing the same calm smile. But this time, it wasn't restraint. It was peace. 6 months passed like water finding its level. I ran the Helena Tate Foundation from my home office, the dust gone, the files organized, purpose restored. We'd already helped 12 widowed women start their own small businesses. Every thank you letter I received felt like healing. Aaron came to dinner every Sunday now, just the two of us. We talked honestly, sometimes painfully, about the years he'd looked away while I suffered. He was in therapy, working through how he'd enabled Vanessa's cruelty. "I keep thinking about that first dinner," he said one Sunday over coffee. "When she called you a fool and you just smiled. You knew even then, didn't you?" "I knew I'd survive," I told him. "That's different from knowing the future. But I knew I was stronger than anyone thought. Including you." He nodded, accepting the truth of it. Vanessa disappeared from our lives completely. Last I heard, she'd moved to another state, starting over somewhere her scandal hadn't reached. I wished her neither well nor ill. She'd simply become irrelevant. Some Sunday afternoons, I worked in my garden, tending the roses that had outlasted everyone's assumptions about me. I thought about that dinner, that word, fool, and how it had set everything in motion. I smiled at my flowers and whispered what I'd learned through all of it: you don't have to fight fire with fire. Sometimes, you just let the smoke clear, stand in the space you've always owned, and plant something beautiful where the ashes fell. My name is Helena Tate. I'm 60 years old. And I'm nobody's fool.